I'm Theresa Skorseth, and this is Robin Hensel. We're here with Can We Talk? And boy, can we talk. We've got a lot of things to cover today. We want to start with the Philando Castile tragedy, murder. The Philando Castile murder. Let's call it what it is. It's homicide.
Yeah.
And Robin's going to share something from the Star Tribune this morning.
Yeah, this is the young man who was shot in the Minneapolis area. And there was an article this morning on the Star Tribune that I thought is really noteworthy to read. Outpouring of grief from Philando's Castile's St. Paul school community, and it shows his picture with evidently a colleague of his. And I'm just going to read it by Anthony Lonetree of the Star Tribune. At J.J. Hill Montessori Magnet School, where Castile and co-worker Vanessa Smith served meals to more than 500 kids twice a day, he was remembered for his patience and friendly demeanor. He smiled at everybody who came into the building and said John Edmond, a paraprofessional at J.J. Hill for the past 7 years. I remember him saying, "I just want everybody here to be happy." He wanted the cafeteria to be a happy place. It was a huge goal and not an easy one, and he did it. I'll let you go over and just keep scrolling.
A Facebook page for the school's PTO was lit up with praises. There was one from a mom who recalled how he'd make time to listen when she'd call him about her child's food allergy. Another from a social worker, a school social worker, said he'd have food and a smile for every child in the morning, no matter what time they walked in the door. And another from a teacher, thankful that school was out and she wouldn't have to explain what happened to her students. In a statement from St. Paul Public Schools, a co-worker said kids loved him. He was smart, overqualified. He was quiet, respectful, and kind. I knew him as warm and funny. He called me his wingman. He wore a shirt and tie to his supervisor interview and said his goal was to one day sit on the other side of this table. Now let's review the facts for anyone who somehow hasn't heard about this. And of course, by the time this airs, I'm sure you will have. But Philando Castile and his girlfriend and her daughter, a young child, were stopped because he had was it a tail light out? Is that?
Yeah, tail light out.
Yeah. So they were stopped for that reason. And when the officer came to the window of the driver's side, Castile told him that he had a permit to carry, but that he wasn't carrying at the moment. And he said, "I can show you my registration, my permit, and my license." And he said, "It's in my wallet." And he reached for the wallet. Then apparently the officer told him not to reach for the wallet. And there I'm unclear whether he persisted in doing that or whether at that point the officer shot. But he shot him apparently 4 times in the arm. While the girlfriend was filming it live, she was live streaming the whole thing and so calm and collected. She was just so cool under fire because this was literally happening while she's watching. And he shot. The officer shot Castile 4 times. I believe it was 4 times in the arm, and in front of the girlfriend and the child in the back seat. And the whole time the officer was sort of hyperventilating, screaming at the woman to keep her hands where you could see them. And anyway, he bled out in the car or in the ambulance on the way to the hospital. He was dead on arrival. So this is yet another case of police brutality. It's a homicide, from my point of view, and I think a great many other people will think so too. Not a premeditated murder, but definitely manslaughter, because there was no proof that Castile was any kind of threat. There was apparently an assumption on the part of the police officer, but it was an assumption, and so he shot and killed him.
Well, and troubling is that blacks, Latinas, Muslims, people of different looks are targeted more often than white people are for these bogus, menial, trivial stops, like something hanging from the windshield,
Yeah.
or a taillight out, or a cracked windshield, or something else. Now, cops are trained to look for that, particularly because if they can get somebody on a stop like that, And then if they see something like a bag of white powder or marijuana pipe or anything else, they can question and they can, you know, it oftentimes leads to a result for something like that. But I'll bet you anything this was a case of racial profiling as well as the fact that it was just clear he shouldn't have shot him.
Yeah, I was stopped for a taillight out just about a year ago, and the police officer told me, "You have a taillight out." I said, "Oh, I had no idea." Well, actually, it was a headlight. It was a headlight out, which is even more serious. He gave me a warning and told me to get it fixed and have a nice day. Because I'm a middle-aged white lady, you know?
Right.
If I'd been a black kid, my daughter, who's black, was stopped for not having an illuminated back license plate. She didn't have that.
Yeah, the little
plate.
light.
Yeah.
They stop a lot for that in down here.
Oh, and it ended up being just a horrible ordeal for her. She missed a court date, lost her license. She couldn't prove, she didn't have proof of insurance with her, although she had insurance. And they're, you know, supposed to be able to look that up on their little in-car computer anyway. So why she had to be able to show them a piece of paper, well, that's not neither there. And it was eventually resolved, of course, but she's black, and I'm going to say it right out loud. Little Falls Police Department is no different from the big city police departments when it comes to stopping black people, particularly young black people, for suspicion of something or such a minor offense.
So that wasn't the only incident where,
No,
you know,
not at all.
she was stopped because of giving the cop a suspicious look.
Oh, that's
At
one
one
point. At one point, yeah, he didn't like her looks, so he stopped her.
Yeah. Well, and I have kids of different ethnicity, and I'm getting more and more concerned for my kids. They're not lawbreakers. You know, they've had their share of little things along the way in life, but nothing serious.
Right.
But they live in the metro area, and with all this stuff happening, I get more and more concerned every day for their safety, just because they are of different ethnicity.
Right.
You know, so
that's what makes them vulnerable. That is like the first and most important risk factor for young folks. If you're a person of color, you better make sure that everything on your car is absolutely perfect, because they'll stop you if it isn't.
well, the sad thing is sometimes even if you do exactly as they say and don't resist, you still get killed.
Yeah, Philando Castile was not resisting. He was trying his best to cooperate.
Well, and then we got the Baton Rouge, Louisiana killing.
Yes.
That looked like outright cold-blooded murder.
Yeah.
All within what? A week of each other. I mean, it's never ending. And if there was ever a time and if ever a group was more important and so critical, Black Lives Matter is right on the mark. It's a good thing we have them. They have been working as well as Citizens United Against Police Brutality in the Twin Cities and Cop Block. And Andrew Henderson, my friend, who exposed this A.J. Rothacker, who instructed people, and he was a cop at the time in St. Paul, I believe, said that, and I don't know if it was Minneapolis or St. Paul PBD, but anyway, J.J. Rothacker, and he told people to run over Black Lives Matter protesters, and they wouldn't get in trouble for it.
Yeah.
And then later he resigned, I believe, and so Andrew Henderson is my friend, the one who exposed all that. Those groups that he's involved with, and Citizens United Against Police Brutality and Black Lives Matter, and all these groups are informing citizens to get live on your smartphone. You can get an app called Bamboozer, which when you press the button, you're filming live, and if they throw your camera in the toilet or they confiscate it or anything else, the film that you're making still goes right up to the...
It goes straight to
live
streaming, so
live
there's
streaming
no
to the
delay.
sky, and people can see it, and there's no taking it away, and that's the best thing ever to help keep cops in line. I think it's one of the best things. And, you know, I would never criticize police unfairly.
No.
I was a law enforcement wife for almost 20 years, and when policing is done correctly, they should be called peace officers.
Yes,
that's what they're designed, that's what their job is to do, is to keep the peace. But it isn't like that today, like it was when my ex started in the field that he chose, and things have really gone downhill, and I don't know what's gonna happen in the future with all of this, but something really needs to change, because it's like that, the girlfriend of this fellow in the Twin Cities said, Lord, we're innocent people, And she's right, they were innocent people.
Absolutely innocent.
And he died.
And then they had her on the sidewalk
And they handcuffed her.
handcuffed her in front of her little daughter, who
Yeah.
was screaming.
She didn't do anything wrong. She wasn't an accomplice in crime or anything. They
And
didn't
she
tell her
was
why they were arresting her,
being
other than they
so-
said, we're just putting these handcuffs on you till it's over.
Till we figure out what's going on. We're
Yeah,
just gonna handcuff
you
on the
can't
ground.
do that to somebody.
No.
So when this is all over with, I hope she sues the city for that, because they shouldn't have arrested her, put
Yeah.
handcuffs on her.
No,
She wasn't doing anything wrong.
I know, and she was being so cooperative, so careful to do exactly what they said. Which is
Well,
what they
unless
got her
we
on.
didn't see something on their film, what they were filming, if we didn't see that she was resisting or something, but it doesn't sound like she was
No.
from the audio tape that we listened to from her cell phone.
Yeah, it went, even after her cell phone was dropped, we heard the audio, so it was not a picture of what was going on, but it certainly was the sounds of
Right.
everything that was happening.
Now, this leads right into this unique case that I want to talk a lot about. And it involves a group of people suing the city of Crystal. And rather than try to explain this, I'm just going to go ahead and read from the complaint with jury demand that came off the internet. The people involved in this lawsuit can't talk about this, but I sure can. This is a group called Communities United Against Police Brutality.
So it's not Citizens United.
Communities
Communities
United.
United.
Yeah, I maybe said it earlier wrong.
Yeah, that's right.
Communities United Against Police Brutality, CUAPB. Okay, so I'm just going to start to read, and then at some point I'm going to let you read, and I've got it circled that we got to read all of that.
All of that.
Because this is a fascinating case. It's a lawsuit against the city of Crystal, and they have suppressed free speech big time. And Theresa and I have experienced that at our city hall in a number of ways. And our next episode, be sure to stay tuned for, that's going to air. We're going to have some very colorful things on that episode, and you will want to definitely stay tuned for the next episode that'll air after this one. All right, so here we go. This was filed May 20th of 2016. Court file number case 0 and then 2 dots 16-CV in small letters -01411 these are capital letters, D is David, S is Sam, D is David, dash K, M is Mary, M is Mary. Okay? Communities United Against Police Brutality. Michelle Gross, Karen Lincoln, Samuel Wagner, David Bicking, Jamie Belden, Liz Dahl, Janelle Colway, Janet Nye, and Lucille Watt. Plaintiffs, those are the plaintiffs, versus City of Crystal and Mayor Renee Bauman, Mayor Jim Adams, Council Member Julie Deschler, Council Member John Budziskiewski, I don't know if I'm pronouncing it right, Council Member David Anderson, Council Member Janet Moore, Council Member Mark Hoffman, Council Member Joseph Selton, Council Member Laura Libby, Council Member Casey Peak, City Manager Ann Norris, Police Chief John Bannock, Police Chief Stephanie Revering, Officer Justin Tourville, Officer Peter Underthun, Officer Douglas Leslin, Officer Mike Meehan, and Officers John Doe's 1-2, whose identities are presently unknown to plaintiffs, all in their individual and official capacities. Those are the defendants. Introduction. This is an action for money damages brought pursuant to 42 U.S.C. 1983, 1985, and 1988, and the First Amendment to the United States Constitution against the City of Crystal and its above-named officials and or employees. It is alleged that the defendants violated plaintiffs' First Amendment rights by prohibiting freedom of speech and expression by retaliating against plaintiffs for engaging in free speech and by discriminating against plaintiffs on the basis of their protected speech and expression. Facts. Introduction. On July 29th, 2008, the Ramirez family home in the city of Crystal, Minnesota was burglarized, essentially of all the family's household possessions. The burglary allegedly involved a police officer of another jurisdiction who was a member of the Metro Gang Strike Force. This burglary was reported to the Crystal Police, who performed no investigation beyond the initial offense report. Now, this is a Latina family, so a minority family. A community organization, Communities United Against Police Brutality, at the request of the Ramirez family, attempted to advocate for the family to have this burglary investigated by the Crystal Police Department. Two Crystal police officers, Sergeant Rob Erkenbrack and Officer Alan Watt, spoke up to city officials to express concern over the apparent corruption involved in not investigating the burglary. They were subsequently fired from their positions. At the request of Officers Erkenbrack and Watt, CUAPB, that's Communities United Against Police Brutality, also attempted to advocate for these two whistleblower police officers and garner community support. Part of CUAPB's advocacy involved appearing before the Crystal City Council to raise awareness of these issues and to ask for redress for the Ramirez family and Officers Erkenbrack and Watt. The City Council, City Manager Ann Norris, and Crystal Police Department's leadership then entered into a pattern and practice of illegal behavior to oppose CUAPB's efforts. These patterns and practices illegally prohibited First Amendment protected speech by members of CUAPB and violated their constitutional rights. In addition to their actions to oppose CUAPB's and prohibit its members' free speech, the city also violated the Minnesota Open Meeting Law, Minnesota Statute 13D.01, multiple times, as documented by the Minnesota Department of Administration Information Policy Analysis Division, IPAD, opinion. And I also have a copy of that opinion here. Now I'll let you take over from right there.
Okay. Prior to December 2012, the only rule that the City of Crystal applied to the open forum section of the City Council meetings was that each citizen was limited to 3 minutes of comment time. On December 18th, 2012, Mayor Bowman and the City Council announced that new open forum rules had been adopted. Specifically, Mayor Bowman announced that the city adopted a new rule which would limit each subject to be presented for a total of 10 minutes, meaning that citizens wishing to speak on a topic that had generated more than 10 minutes of prior discussion during the same meeting could not speak on the same topic during open forum. In addition, the mayor also announced a second new rule which prohibited citizen speech on any matter under pending or threatened litigation. During our recitation of the new rules, Mayor Bowman stated, "We added new language after 8 years. This new rule restricted plaintiffs' free speech and prevented Crystal community members from learning about potential liability resulting from the city's actions. These new rules were added after CUAPB's advocacy and were clearly targeted at CUAPB and the plaintiffs to restrict their protected speech." On September 17, 2013, following September 3, 2013 meeting, during which defendant Mayor Jim Adams prevented members of the public from speaking during open forum based on the topics they wished to speak about, the city announced new restrictions during open forum, including prohibitions on comments related to the Ramirez matter or Officers Erkenbach and Watt or other current employees, as well as a directive that citizens are invited, I'm quoting now, citizens are invited to communicate with city staff at the mayor and council by email or letter about this or any other topic, unquote. These are private routes of communication. One benefit of communicating concerns during the open forum period is that these concerns are shared with the greater community through live broadcast of city council meetings. The new rules for open forum also included a specific reference to Communities United Against Police Brutality, making it clear that the organization and its supporters were the target for these new restrictions. On December 2nd, 2014, after supporters of Communities United Against Police Brutality stopped attending city council meetings, the rules for the open forum portion of the meeting returned substantially to what they were prior to December 18, 2012, with the exception that the rules regarding limiting topics to a total of 10 minutes was retained.
October 2nd, 2012, plaintiffs Bicking, Nye, Gross, and Colway participated in a peaceful and lawful demonstration outside of Crystal City Hall, and later that same day attended the scheduled Crystal City Council meeting. The purpose of the demonstration was to raise awareness of what plaintiffs perceived as an intentional cover-up and mishandling of the Ramirez matter by the City of Crystal administration, Crystal Police Department, and Chief Bannock. Specifically, plaintiffs sought to express their First Amendment protected views that a Brooklyn Park police officer committed crimes and constitutional violations against the Ramirez family in the City of Crystal, and that the Crystal Police Department and Chief Bannock failed to properly investigate these crimes and constitutional violations because the perpetrator was a police officer. That the City of Crystal administration, Crystal Police Department, and Chief Bannock intentionally failed to investigate and covered up the criminal allegations related to the Ramirez matter, and that the mishandling and cover-up of the Ramirez matter was based on favoritism toward a police officer and discrimination against the Ramirez family on the basis of their Hispanic, Latino, race, ethnicity. Plaintiffs Bicking, Nye, Gross, and Colway participated in the demonstration outside of the Crystal City Hall. During this demonstration, plaintiffs, along with others, displayed various signs with messages criticizing the City of Crystal administration, as they should have, City of Crystal Police Department, and Chief Bannock, and accusing City of Crystal administration, Police Department, and Chief Bannock of favoritism, racism, and perpetrating an intentional cover-up to protect a police officer. The City Council meeting was scheduled to be held that day, had a variety of issues on the agenda, including the swearing in of a new Chief of Police, as well as other routine business. During the demonstration, Crystal police officers secretly photographed the peaceful demonstrators from an upper floor window in the police administration building. This included photographs of a Crystal City Council candidate, Laura Libby, who participated in the demonstration. As plaintiffs engaged in their peaceful demonstration outside of City Hall, a number of Crystal police officers positioned themselves in various positions around the City Hall. 5 of these officers, including Defendant Officer Tourville, stood directly in front of the main entrance, such that every person who sought to gain entry into the City Hall and the City Council meeting had to pass these officers to enter the building. Officer Tourville was equipped with a camera. As individuals approached the main entrance to City Hall, Officer Tourville openly photographed the plaintiffs and every other individual who also was a participant in the demonstration. Talk about an act of intimidation.
Yeah. Now, was this a still camera?
Let them try to pull that in town here at City Hall ever. Just let them try to pull that one. It'll be the battle of the cameras.
I know. This is schadenfreude. This is a kind of being happy that things are bad for somebody else. It's a German term. Because things have been so bad with our city council, it's almost heartening to read that it's not just here. Although, of course, it's disheartening because it shouldn't be anywhere.
I'm sorry, folks, I stopped in the middle of this. I'll get back to this. But I just want to say, I'm commented to you today before we started filming. I've said this a million times. In every small town, in every city, in every township, in every county, in every state of this nation, if there were people that did what Theresa and I have done, I don't think we would have rotten government. All the way from Little Falls to Washington. I don't think we'd have a continuation of this good old white boys club, running the show with everything. Opportunity hoarding, taking advantage of all the grant money, leaving nothing for the poor people in the community, and basically the people at the lower end of the totem pole getting screwed in this country. I don't think it would happen. I think if we started a national movement like that, we would be in a different situation than we are today. Yes. Because this corruption level runs all the way from Little Falls to Washington, with business being done under the table, and it maybe doesn't qualify as outright corruption, but it's just plain wrong. You don't run a government like that, whether it's local government, county government, the military, or departments in our government of any type. You don't do that. It seems like there's a level of corruption in every single body of our government.
Yes.
Elected officials, appointed officials, you name it.
Yeah.
And something has to change. And I said in the fall of 2011, when that photographer, the guy from the Star Tribune, I forget his name now, but the man who covered my case from the beginning, when he came, I said, I'm concerned about if people can't peacefully protest and air their feathers in a peaceful way, like putting signs in your front yard, it's going to lead to more trouble.
Yeah.
And look at what has happened
Yes.
since the fall of 2011,
Mhm.
with everything just,
Locally, statewide, internationally.
it's coming to pass.
Yes.
I was concerned, an Occupy movement, which was backed by Bishop Desmond Tutu, a renowned person,
Mhm.
stood side by side and aligned himself with the Occupy movement. So did former Vice President Al Gore, and a number of other, Chris Hedges, a former Presbyterian minister, he probably still is a Presbyterian minister. Countless good people stood aligned with that movement, and yet it's been criticized for multiple things, and
Yeah.
it was a peaceful movement that got infiltrated by a bunch of troublemakers, probably our FBI and other groups infiltrated on purpose.
Possibly outside agitators, but I'm not even convinced that happened. I think the reports were so slanted and so fictionalized that we've got a skewed picture of how
Yeah.
all of that worked.
Yeah. All right, so getting back to this. However, in other individuals who were not participants in the demonstration and who attended city council meeting for other business were not photographed by Officer Tourville.
Oh, so it was just the people who were under.
Opposing the view, they had a dissenting view, just like here with me.
Yep.
Somebody dissenting from the go along to get along crowd,
Mhm.
and gotta shut them up in any way you can, gotta intimidate them, even if you gotta arrest them for sitting in the wrong part of City Hall. There's no laughing matter, but it is too ridiculous.
Yeah,
it is
yeah.
funny as hell.
It's
It,
funny.
it just really, it's such a goofy thing that happened. I mean, they removed the chairs, they removed the tables specifically as a trap, because
Yeah.
they suspicioned what I was going to do, because Mike, what was his name?
Oh, Crutchy.
Mike Critchie told him, he overheard us talking, and I said, next time, we get to go sit up there.
Yeah.
And he heard every word of it, and I'm sure that he told his buddies in city. Anyway, okay, so,
We gotta learn to talk quieter.
yeah. Or talk where he's not around.
Where he's not around.
Officer Tourville intentionally singled out and photographed the plaintiffs and others who participated in the peaceful demonstration to retaliate against them for engaging in free speech and criticizing City of Crystal administration and police department, and to discourage and suppress their First Amendment activities, and created a chilling effect, making them fearful to enter the building. That's true. Every bit of that's true. I mean, I wasn't there, but they're not going to tell something that's false in the court document.
Right.
Okay, and by the way, folks, I should say that I have become Facebook friends with Michelle Gross, and she's aware of my case heading for the Supreme Court.
So,
So
Michelle Gross is.
she was one of the plaintiffs.
She was one of the plaintiffs.
I think she's the founder or the president of this Community United Against Police Brutality.
Right.
Yes. So,
Okay.
and she has no idea that I'm reading this today and talking about this, but I want to do this because it's very interesting. People need to know about this.
Yeah.
Because if it can happen here, and it can happen down in Crystal, it can happen anywhere. So,
Right.
get to City Hall, people. Start raising your voice.
Monitor those folks down there.
That's right. Okay. In addition, some individuals chose not to enter to avoid having their photograph taken and having their image on file with the police department. That's interesting.
Yeah.
And then, in addition, some individuals covered their faces to avoid being photographed. Once the city council meeting commenced, the new chief of police was sworn in, and defendant Mayor Renee Baumann permitted the public attending the meeting to loudly applaud the new chief several times throughout the ceremony and at the conclusion of the ceremony, and to express their approval of the favorable comments that were made pertaining to the new chief.
Later on, during the open forum portion of the meeting, Crystal resident Laura Libby, who participated in the peaceful demonstration, made a brief statement criticizing City of Crystal administration and police department with regards to the Ramirez matter. At the conclusion of Ms. Libby's statement, the public and the plaintiffs applauded, at which point defendant Mayor Bowman interrupted the applause and prohibited further applauding for Ms. Libby or others critical of the City of Crystal administration and police department. Through her actions, Mayor Bowman permitted applause and approval of comments favorable to the City of Crystal administration and police department, and at the same time interrupted and prohibited applause and approval of comments critical of City of Crystal administration and police department. On July 31st, 2013, members of the Crystal City Council and City Manager Ann Norris engaged in an email exchange in which they discussed whether to postpone the hearing on an unrelated issue, opining that holding the hearing that night could possibly make a planned rally by CUAPB look bigger than it is and give the impression, and I'm quoting now, look bigger than it is and give the impression that they has more support than they have to the media present, unquote. This email exchange is attached as Exhibit B. In addition, City Manager Ann Norris stated in her email that the City Council would not discuss any of the issues raised by CUAPB due to pending litigation, though there was no pending litigation at the time. The tone of her message shows clear bias against CUAPB and the plaintiffs. This email exchange constitutes an unlawful electronic meeting in violation of the Minnesota Open Meeting Law and demonstrates the defendant's intent and motive to conspire against the plaintiffs and violate their First Amendment rights. Excuse me. On August 5th, 2015, the Crystal City Council adjourned their regular council meeting, went to another location, and then held a closed work session. Oh. This session was not properly noticed. There was no statement on the record prior to closing the meeting, and impermissible topics were discussed during the closed meeting. During this closed meeting, defendants discussed and conspired on a strategy to prohibit and interfere with plaintiffs' First Amendment rights. This meeting constitutes an unlawful closed meeting in violation of the Minnesota Open Meeting Law and demonstrates the defendant's intent to conspire against the plaintiffs and violate their First Amendment rights. The topics discussed during this unlawful meeting are explained in an email attached to this file. On August 20th, 2013, the Crystal City Council held a closed session after their regular council meeting. This meeting was not properly noticed and was held without a statement on record. In addition, the City Council remained in the closed meeting area after reopening the meeting, which caused plaintiffs and other members of the public to miss the open portion of the meeting. This is just...
It's Little Falls personified.
Reprehensible.
Yeah, it is. I mean, there have been shenanigans plenty of them pulled here by councils past, present, mayors past, present.
Yeah. But
this tops the cake.
This is really something. This, of course, is happening in Crystal, not Little Falls, but it just goes to show it's rampant. It caused plaintiffs and other members of the public to miss the open portion of the meeting because they had no way to know that the meeting had been reopened. This meeting constitutes an unlawful closed meeting in violation of the Minnesota Open Meeting Law and demonstrates the defendant's intent to conspire against the plaintiffs and violate their First Amendment rights. Upon information and belief, the topic discussed during this unlawful meeting was the situation involving Officers Erkenbrack and Watt. Had the meeting been properly noticed, Officers Erkenbrack and Watt would have had the right to request that the meeting be open so that plaintiffs and other members of the public could attend and participate, and the information discussed during the meeting would be available to the broader community. Officer Watt told Plaintiff Gross that he received notice of the meeting as the Minnesota Open Meeting Law required. That had he received notice of the meeting as the Minnesota Open Meeting Law required, he would have requested that the meeting be conducted openly. On September 3rd, 2013, plaintiffs attended the Crystal City Council meeting for the purposes of participating in the open forum and discussing the situations of certain city employees. When defendant Mayor Adams reviewed the open forum sheets and learned who had signed up to speak and their intended topics, so this open forum, they apparently had to submit their names and topics ahead of time. He announced that the open forum portion of the meeting was to be canceled, thus prohibiting the speech of the plaintiffs based on the content of their speech. The open forum sign-up sheets are attached here to this file. When Plaintiff Bicking attempted to object to the cancellation, He was interrupted by Defendant Mayor Adams and told that the council did not want to listen to what he had to say, and he was told to sit down, be quiet, and then told to leave. When Plaintiff Bickey continued to speak in a civil tone, the City Council took a recess and held a closed meeting in violation of the Minnesota Open Meeting Law. While that meeting was in recess, defendants played extremely loud music in the room, forcing members of the public and the plaintiffs to leave the room. It's so childish. After a period of time, it became apparent that the council members had re-entered the council chamber. Plaintiffs Wagner, Belden, and Dahl then attempt to re-enter the chambers to attend the meeting and participate in open forum, but were blocked by defendant Crystal police officers Underthun and Leslin, who stated that Mayor Adams directed them to keep members of the public perceived to be associated with CUAPB out of the meeting, even if they had not attempted to speak previously.
You can't do that either.
I know.
You can't stop the public from coming to a public meeting.
I know, it's crazy. Notably, no one had been disruptive during open forum, and only Plaintiff Bickey attempted to speak in a civil tone, while all others sat quietly in the room. You know, this is fear. Fear is what is on the part of the City Council, the defendants in this case. They're using whatever little powers they have to stop anybody else from.
Well, it's not any different than Don Clayton, former president of the City Council of Little Falls, stating to you, you can't. We don't need to listen to you.
Yeah, we don't need to.
We don't need to hear what you have to say.
Even though I not only had told him what I was going to say, I had actually gotten myself on the agenda.
Right.
I was part of the meeting.
They didn't want to hear what you had to
Item
say.
number 4.
Clear-cut case of First Amendment free speech violated. Clear-cut.
Crazy. Okay, I'm sorry. Let's. I'm just.
By the way, your statute of limitations probably isn't up yet either.
Oh, so you think I should sue?
Yeah.
I know you do, dear.
Let me say that publicly one more time. I think she should sue the city of Little Falls for violating her right to free speech. You bet.
Well,
Because they did. Clearly they did.
Yeah, I know they did. I know they did, and they really, really ticked me off. The defendant's actions on September 13, 2013 in Crystal constitute an unlawful closed meeting in violation of the Minnesota Open Meeting Law and demonstrate the defendant's intent to conspire against the plaintiffs and violate their First Amendment rights. You want to take, well, here, I'll tell you what, I'll read the next section and give it back to you.
Right.
On September 17, 2013, a list of prohibited topics for open forum was added to the City Council meeting agenda. A list of prohibited topics.
Yeah.
Mayor Jim Adams
They
announced.
told them what they could or couldn't say.
I know, why even have a public forum if you're only going to listen to what you
Boy,
want to
you
hear?
talk about egregious violation of First Amendments. You know, it's unbelievable.
It is. Give people a little bit of power and they think that they are the emperor.
Yeah.
Okay.
Power corrupts, just like Colleen Rowley says.
Yeah,
Power corrupts.
it does. Mayor Jim Adams announced this list of prohibited topics at the beginning of the open forum that day. During the same meeting, Mayor Adams also announced another new rule for open forum, which prohibited citizens from speaking about any current City of Crystal employee during open forum and referred specifically to CUAPB. City of Crystal and its elected officials enacted the rules above specifically for the purpose of silencing plaintiffs and preventing them from exercising their First Amendment rights to criticize City of Crystal officials, making their criticisms known to the public, and seeking redress from the government. These City Council meetings are broadcasted on cable television and are available for public viewing on the internet. In addition, at the beginning of this meeting, Mayor Defendant Jim Adams announced that he was adding a closed session to the meeting. This closed session did not meet the criteria for an emergency meeting. The meeting was not properly noticed, the subjects of the closed meeting were not able to vindicate their rights, and the topics were improper for a closed meeting. This meeting constitutes an unlawful closed meeting in violation of the Minnesota Open Meeting Law and demonstrates the defendant's intent to conspire against the plaintiffs and violate their First Amendment rights. Upon information and belief, the topic discussed was the situation with Officers Erkenbrack and Watt. If the meeting had been properly noticed, Officers Erkenbrack and Watt would have had the right to request that the meeting be open so that members of the public, including the plaintiffs, could attend and participate, and the information discussed during the meeting would be available to the broader community. Officer Watt told Plaintiff Gross that he received notice of the meeting as the Minnesota Open Meeting Law required. That had he received notice of the meeting as the Minnesota Open Meeting Law required, he would have requested that the meeting be conducted openly. This illegal action by the defendants is further evidence of their motivation to prohibit speech of the plaintiffs in order to maintain their secrets.
Did that just say that you can see those city council meetings online?
Online, yes.
On their website?
Yes.
I was just gonna go there.
Well, I would think on their website. It says that they're, let's see, which page was this? These city council meetings are broadcasted on on cable television and are available for public viewing on the internet. So yes, I would think it would be on their
So
website.
I'm gonna look that up when we get done here.
Okay.
And I have a really bright idea, but I'm not gonna share it on TV.
Okay.
I'll share it privately with you afterwards. I think you can kind of guess what I'm gonna suggest.
Well, yeah, I'm looking you, Robin, as I do. I have an idea.
Okay, so are we ready here?
Right there.
Events of October 1st, 2013, the Crystal City Council held a closed session after their regular meeting. The meeting was not properly noticed and there was no statement on the record prior to closing the session as required by Minnesota Statute Chapter 13D. This meeting constitutes an unlawful closed meeting in violation of the Minnesota Open Meeting Law, see Exhibit A, and demonstrates the defendant's intent to conspire against the plaintiffs and violate the First Amendment rights in order to maintain secrecy regarding the Ramirez, Erkenbach, Watt matters. Upon information and belief, the topic discussed was the situation with Officers Erkenbach and Watt. If the meeting had been properly noticed, Officer Erkenbach and Watt would have had the right to request that the meeting be open so that the members of the public, including the plaintiffs, could attend and participate. I think maybe you read that part, didn't you?
You know, it's...
And the information discussed, during the meeting would be available to the broader community. Officer Watt told Plaintiff Gross that had he received notice of the meetings that the open meeting law required, he would have requested that the meeting be conducted openly. This illegal action by the defendants is further evidence of the motivation to prohibit speech on the plaintiffs in order to maintain their secrets. Events of December 13th, 2013. On December 13, 2013, at the conclusion of the open forum section of the Crystal City Council meeting, Councilmember Julie Deschler read a statement vilifying CUAPB and its president, Michelle Gross. Her statement included a number of false and defamatory claims. Wow.
Yeah.
They're in deep doo-doo. Ms. Gross, I hope they win.
Oh, yeah.
Ms. Gross attempted to dispute her statements by stating, "Your statements are defamatory," but was prevented from doing so by then Deputy Police Chief Mike Meehan, who told her she would be ejected from the meeting for continuing to respond. Couldn't even defend herself against obvious defamatory statements during a public meeting. Good grief.
Yes.
Defendant Deschler's conduct shows bias towards CUAPB and shows that speech criticizing employees and elected officials of the city was prohibited, while speech criticizing members of the public was permitted. On February 18, 2014, plaintiffs attended the Crystal City Council meeting in order to speak during the open meeting portion of the open forum portion of the meeting. Mayor Adams announced restrictions on the speech, including no discussion of pending or threatened litigation, as well as a list of prohibited topics. A member of the public, L. Erkenbach, spoke about the role of the city council in relationship to city manager. Mayor Adams hit his gavel and told her, "This is not an opportunity for you to take shots at the police chief or the city manager. You can only talk about city government," Erkenbach stated. "I can't read the rest of my comments because you won't let me." During the same meeting, Plaintiff Lincoln also attempted to speak, stating, "I'm embarrassed by your actions with your speech on December 17th. Mayor Adams gavelled to force Plaintiff Lincoln to stop speaking, claiming that her statement had something to do with pending litigation. At this point, even under their unlawful rules, there was no pending litigation. Plaintiff Gross also attempted to speak during the same meeting about her concerns related to the city's treatment of whistleblower Crystal Police Officer Alan Watt. As soon as Plaintiff Gross mentioned Officer Watt's name, Mayor Adams stated, "You are not going to talk about Alan Watt. The rules, the decorum of this organization declare that you will not be talking about Alan Watt." At that point, defendant Deputy Police Chief Mike Meehan approached the podium and bent the microphone down to stop Plaintiff Gross from continuing to speak. At that point, the city council took an abrupt recess and left the chambers. Although CCTV monitors indicated that the council meeting was in recess, It was later learned that the meeting had resumed in a locked room in the basement of City Hall. During this period, police officers came into the chambers and whispered to some members of the community not associated with CUAPB that they had moved to the basement to continue their meeting. When plaintiffs attempted to attend the meeting, they were blocked by Krista police officers Does 1 and 2 and told that the police chief could allow them in. This meeting was later held by iPad to be a closed meeting in violation of the Minnesota Open Meeting Law. On March 4th, 2014, Eric Schlitz spoke during open forum and used the time to praise and offer his appreciation and approval of Crystal Police Chief Stephanie Revering. During his comments, Mr. Schlitz named Chief Revering by name multiple times, and his entire statement was focused on discussing Chief Revering and her performance. Mayor Adams and the rest of the city council allowed Mr. Schlitz to discuss Chief Revering during open forum in violation of the city's newly adopted rules, which prohibited discussion of current city employees. However, whenever plaintiffs had previously attempted to criticize city employees, only 2 weeks prior, on February 18th of 2014, plaintiffs were interrupted and instructed that the new rules prohibit discussion of city employees. Based on these facts, defendants regulated and censored plaintiffs' First Amendment speech by allowing discussion of positive and/or favorable comments regarding city employees and prohibiting discussion of negative and/or critical comments regarding city employees. Injuries and damages, and we got to keep clipping along here because we're running out of time.
As a result of the defendant's actions described above, plaintiffs suffered violations of their First Amendment rights, inability to participate in and observe public meetings, stress, fear, frustration, humiliation, and embarrassment. Based on the facts set forth above, plaintiffs have also been discouraged from participating in future Crystal City Council meetings. As explained above, defendants have often used Crystal City police officers to carry out their constitutional violations and to harass and intimidate the plaintiffs. Plaintiffs wish to engage in future participation in Crystal City Council meetings, but based on the facts set forth above and intimidation by the Crystal City Police Department, plaintiffs fear that they will face further constitutional violations as well as criminal consequences if they engage in such future participation. Claims for relief. Paragraphs 1 through 43, which is what we've read, are incorporated herein by reference as though fully set forth. Based on the above factual allegations, the individual defendants, through their actions, acting under the color of state law, violated plaintiffs' constitutional right to free speech under the First Amendment of the United States to the United States Constitution. As a result of these constitutional violations, plaintiffs suffered damages as aforesaid. Prior to and as of 2012, defendant City of Crystal developed and maintained policies and/or customs exhibiting deliberate indifference toward the constitutional rights of persons in the City of Crystal, which caused the violation of plaintiffs' constitutional rights. It was the policy and/or custom of defendant City of Crystal to inadequately supervise and train its employees, including the individual defendants, thereby failing to adequately prevent and discourage further constitutional violations on the part of its employees. As a result of these policies and/or customs and lack of training, employees of the City of Crystal, including the individual defendants, believed that their actions would not be properly monitored by supervisory employees and that misconduct would not be investigated or sanctioned, but would be tolerated. These policies and/or customs and lack of training were the cause of the violations of plaintiffs' constitutional rights alleged herein. Based on the above factual allegations, the defendants, through their actions acting under the color of state law, conspired and premeditated a plan to intentionally violate plaintiffs' First Amendment rights. As a result of this conspiracy, plaintiffs suffered damages as aforesaid. Wherefore, plaintiffs request that this court grant the following relief. Issue an order granting plaintiffs' judgment against defendants, finding that defendants violated plaintiffs' constitutional rights under the First Amendment to the United States Constitution, and that defendants are liable to plaintiffs for all damages resulting from these violations. Issue a declaratory judgment against defendants, finding the defendants violated plaintiffs' constitutional rights under the First Amendment to the United States Constitution. Issue an injunction ordering defendant City of Crystal to immediately terminate its unlawful policies, customs, and practices which infringe on citizens' First Amendment rights, and to train all present and future elected officials, as well as all present and future police employees, on citizens' First Amendment rights as applicable during City Council meetings. Award of compensatory damages to plaintiffs against all defendants jointly and severally. Award of punitive damages to plaintiffs against all defendants jointly and severally. Award of reasonable attorney's fees and costs to plaintiff pursuant to 42 U.S.C. of 1988. Award of such other and further relief as this court may deem appropriate. And there you have it.
Now, where are we at time-wise, Chris?
10
Oh, we
minutes.
got plenty of time.
Oh,
Okay, now, I want to mention this. I'm going to be putting all of this on my blog, and what you're going to want to look for when you go to the search engine of my blog, it'll be one of the most recent posts, but I post a lot, so I don't know, by the time you get to this, I might have 50 more things on my blog. And I am almost to 250,000 page views now, since I started that blog in fall of 2013. That's a lot of page views, folks.
Yeah.
And I know that there are people looking at not just the work sessions that I post on there, that nobody can see except on this public access TV on my blog. They're looking at city council meetings, and the reason is, and a lot of other stuff too, the reason is you can't see city council meetings because they're not posted on the city website, which they should be.
They should be.
But they're not there, and people that don't have chartered television don't get to view this.
Right.
So they can go to, if they have computer access at the library or somewhere else, they can go and they can look at my blog, and it's a great research tool.
Mm-hmm.
Because anything that I feel is of worth, if I have the time and I'm not too tired or sick or something, I post it because it's like a really big extended diary.
Mm-hmm. Yes, it is.
And I even go back and I research stuff that I have forgotten about or can't find. I go to my blog to find it.
It's
And
not just a
hopefully I
diary, it's a record.
It's a public record,
It's a
that's
public
right.
record.
That's right. Now, so I'm gonna put up all this information, all of the links to this on a blog, and I will title the blog, Communities United Against Police Brutality Lawsuit. So look for that, and in there, you'll wanna read these posts. Protest at City Hall finally gets Crystal's attention, that's one. Hundreds rally in to support 2 Crystal police officers. Crystal fires 1 police officer, another faces termination. Former Crystal cop sues city, police chief, and city manager. Former Crystal cop settles with the city. The facts and procedural history from the iPad, the advisory opinion, I think I can post a link to this, hope so. And I'm going to read this to you because it's terribly important. This is from it's a media release from July 15th, 2013. Oh, and Michelle, from Michelle Gross.
Okay.
It's Communities United Against Police Brutality.
Okay.
And she even lists her phone number. They also list a number that you can call, must be an emergency number. If you have something with police brutality, you can contact them. 612-874-STOP, S-T-O-P. Let me repeat that. 612-874-STOP. Their meetings are held at 4200 Cedar Avenue South in Minneapolis, and I think that's the same address that the WHAM, Women Against Military Madness, they have their headquarters there too.
It could be. Is this a statewide thing? I know it's a 612 is a Minneapolis area code, but I'm just going to say, if you're experiencing police brutality anywhere in the state of Minnesota, call them.
Yeah, I think
if they
you
can't
should-
help you, they'll tell you.
They'll direct you in the right direction, that's right. This is a really good group.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's from a press conference that was held at the Brooklyn Park Library, because that officer was from Brooklyn Park, wasn't he?
I don't know.
I believe he was.
They're right next door to each other, Kristen.
Okay, so, well, yeah, Brooklyn Park Police, okay, that's where I read it, right in here. After submitting 31 well-documented complaints on behalf of community members reporting numerous incidences of brutality and other criminal conduct by Brooklyn Park Police Sergeant Greg Burstad, Communities United Against Police Brutality has learned that Burstad received only a 40-hour suspension and returned to duty as a supervisor. At a press conference, we will play video obtained from Brooklyn Park that shows Burstad repeatedly and violently punching a man who had surrendered with his hands in the air. This assault resulted in substantial bodily harm, the element required for third-degree felony assault. Although this crime was committed in front of many officers, Burstad was never charged. Copies of this video will be provided at the press conference. 12 of the complaints were also filed with the City of Crystal relative to an incident in which Crystal Police failed to investigate the dispossession without legal authority of the Ramirez family from their home by Burstad, and the subsequent theft of their household property while the home was under Burstad's control. The Ramirez family reported these crimes to the Crystal Police Department, yet no investigation was performed other than what was on the original offense report. The investigator stated that he was pressured not to investigate. At one point, the FBI inquired about the case to the chief of police, but still no investigation was done, and Crystal Police Management engaged in a cover-up. 2 Crystal police officers stepped forward to express their concerns about the lack of investigation and other police management corruption. Examples of this corruption include Sergeant Robin Erkenbrack was changing desks and found a note in the desk belonging to now Chief Stephanie Revering when she was in charge of training new officers. Erkenbrack reported the note, which detailed a bet made between Revering and another officer about a new officer would be fired even before he had been hired. The wager was for a bottle of booze. Revering had the new officer fired, and he sued the department and received a settlement. Although Revering admitted to the bet, a sham investigation followed and she was not disciplined. Another cover-up. Chief Revering, then a sergeant, went to a strip club off duty with 2 other officers. They got into an altercation with a patron. Strip club management escorted them out and called Crystal Police to make a complaint. Again, this was covered up. A member of the current police administration transported a live mortar round into police headquarters, endangering the lives of officers and city residents. The building had to be evacuated and the bomb disposed of by the bomb squad. The incident was covered up and never investigated. Instead of acting on the concerns, newly appointed Chief Stephanie Revering, who got this massive applause at
the City Council
City
meeting.
Hall of Crystal, began a campaign of retaliation against these 2 officers. Officer Alan Watt, a 17-year veteran with no complaints from the community, and was placed on administrative leave for 8 months, suspended without pay for 6 weeks, and remains on leave to this day. Sergeant Robin Erkenbeck, a 27-year veteran, 27-year for almost 2 months, was demoted and was threatened. Oh, excuse me, I missed a sentence there. Sergeant Erkenbeck, a 27-year-old decorated veteran with no complaints from the community, has been on administrative leave for about 2 months, was demoted and was threatened with further retaliation if he didn't accept a forced retirement. He remains on administrative leave. CUAPB assisted these officers in filing complaints against Chief Revering with the City of Crystal and with the Minnesota Post Board for illegal retaliation. Copies of these complaints will be available at the press conference. It's an outrage that a criminal cop like Greg Burstad gets a slap on the wrist and is back on the street while 2 honest cops have faced far worse for just doing the right thing, stated Michelle Gross, president of Communities United Against Police Brutality. We are proud to stand up for Officers Watt and Erkenbrack, and we demand that Burstad be fired. At the press conference, CUAPB will be announcing additional actions regarding the lack of appropriate discipline for Burstad's egregious misconduct. Wow.
It's the Wild West, isn't it?
So, and I just want to clarify one thing, that we were reading from a motion to the court. This was not a court decision. this is a lawsuit that was filed in May. And if I get my hands on the response from the city of Crystal, and I'm sure the police officers board will be defending
I'm
or
sure.
writing them a brief,
I'm sure.
just as they are in my case.
Mhm.
I will bring that so we can talk about that. So look for that, folks. And I want to, we're out of time, so I want to just advertise a little bit the next segment. I'm going to come very colorful in more than one way for the next segment you won't want to miss. Stay tuned.
Thanks, guys. See you soon.